Hey crafters, just a reminder, this podcast is for informational and entertainment purposes only, and should not be considered advice.
The views and opinions expressed are our own, and do not represent those of any company or business we currently work with, are associated with, or have worked with in the past. Thanks for tuning in to the FutureCraft podcast. Let's get it started.
Hey there, welcome to the FutureCraft Marketing Podcast, and we're back for season 2, where we're exploring how AI is changing everything from brand to demand. I'm Ken Rudin, one of your guides on this exciting journey.
And I'm Erin Mills, your co-host, and together we're here to unpack the future of AI and go to market.
Wait, hold up. Erin, did you just say go to market? I thought this was a marketing podcast.
Yeah, good catch, Ken. But AI doesn't care about silos. It's transforming not just marketing, but sales, enablement, strategy, basically all things go to market. So we're expanding the conversation to cover all of it.
Okay, I love it. So we're evolving right alongside AI and our listeners. We're still exploring practical insights, testing the latest tech, and talking to the innovators who are shaping the future of go-to-market and AI. That sounds great. Let's do it.
Let's get into it.
Awesome. Hey, Erin, people might be wondering, where have we been?
We've been all over the place. A lot has happened since last time we talked to you guys.
Probably as much that has changed with AI has changed with Erin and I, whether it's personally or professionally. It's been quiet for a little bit.
Yeah, I know. After our last episode, I felt like we had a good handle on AI. We were semi caught up, and I think now we're in this place of holy crap, a lot has happened in the last 6 months. Ken, what do you think? What have you been up to the last 6 months?
Probably as much that has changed with AI has changed with us. So since then, I actually started a new job, still focused on the work that I'm really passionate about, but more in operations and strategy role, but thinking about how AI is going to impact that. And I also started my doctorate. The same energy and excitement that I have around the work that we do at FutureCraft is really extending into my research. So I'm really focused on AI, not surprising, as well as the impact on how it's going to affect leaders. And I think that actually fits really well into this. Along with that, I've been traveling a lot, been talking to people all over the world about AI and what they're experiencing, and did some traveling with you actually as well. So I've been busy. How about you? What have you been up to?
Yeah, similarly, personally, I got married, which is super exciting.
Totally.
And you were along for that trip. No, we did not marry each other. And work-wise, still a CMO, still pushing the boundaries of AI. I think one of the things that got me really excited about season 2 is we're doing a lot with workflows, which was a little bit more on the edge of our expertise 6 months ago. It's more about how do you make the whole machine work better together. And AI really does help to enable that bottom to top and top to bottom of the funnel. So I'm really excited to get into the conversation.
Yeah, I think for everyone to know, like typically we bring in a guest, but after some conversations that we've actually had with some practitioners, some listeners, we realized that we're just going to do an episode focused on tools and tech that we've been implementing and using, sharing what we've learned and how they can help you. And that's where we're going to focus today's episode. And then you'll see a regular format moving forward where we'll still bring in some of the great thinkers and doers around AI right now, but we wanted to share with you some of the cool stuff we're working on.
Yeah. And if you think about where AI was a year ago compared to where we are today, we have new models that we've been using a ton of. We've got things like Claude artifacts. Shout out to Lisa Adams for inspiring some of the work there. We've got really sophisticated chatbots that do more voice. We've got video. Canva's Dreamlab has gotten way better. So the overall advancements, it's pretty incredible what we've seen. And even some of the tools where we said, not so much, we'll talk about one of them today, has gotten way, way better as well. And so I think that's the other thing that's really exciting is historically, we had to wait for software to get better. And it would be you put in a product feature request or something along those lines, and maybe a year or two down the road, you might get that feature included. And we're seeing that happen so much faster now.
Yeah, I've been really surprised. You mentioned some of the tools that we've used previously and tried. The pace that they've moved and how effective it is. And we've gone from this stage of kind of experimenting with AI and, oh, like it might work for this, or how could it look like for this, to saying, no, actually, this is how I use AI as part of my job. And we're going to show you guys some of that today. So we're going to break it down. We're going to cover 4 topics, 4 tools that we've used, and share a little bit about the use case and the impact it's had. And we're really excited to share it with you.
We're in season 2, episode 1. Our second part of this episode is going to dive into some of the tools we've been using across the go-to-market motion. Ken, there are probably some listeners that are still just getting their feet wet, maybe just using ChatGPT or Gemini to have some conversations, maybe a little content creation, and thinking about use cases and really starting there. But what are you seeing with folks you were talking to?
Yeah. So first of all, wherever you're at right now is still good. If you're engaging and learning what makes a good prompt or how to get a good response or output from Gemini, Claude, or ChatGPT, you're good. So please keep doing that. But I think what we're finding now is, again, less of that experimentation and more of like the exploration of like the art of the possible. So like maybe people thinking like, what is this big idea I have that AI could do? And then trying to push the functionality so that you can achieve that. And you might not be able to get 100% of the way there, but I think you'd be surprised how far you can get. And I think that this first use case around building a digital buyers group, is a great example of pushing things beyond it, like what I thought it could originally do.
Yeah, I think it's a good point in that it's not just use case by use case,
Yeah.
right? When you were thinking about the buyers group, it wasn't just, I think I might want some feedback. How did you come up with it?
Yeah, so it actually came from a real challenge that I was having. I was trying to understand a broad breadth of industries and buyers from various industries, and trying to have an understanding and be able to talk to that many customers, it was just impossible. And it was really challenging, and I felt like it was holding me back from being able to execute on things like messaging or assets or thought leadership topics. So what I was wondering was like, is there a way that I could leverage AI to help me answer questions about my customer? And that's where the whole focus group actually came from. So it wasn't really, oh yeah, let me create a digital focus group so I don't have to do customer research anymore. That's not the thing. It's all about that problem that you have in your day to day with something that you do in your job, and trying to connect it to something that's possible, or think of what's possible.
Yeah, I think that's what's really interesting is it's less about this one unique problem and hey, I'm just going to solve this pain point. And it puts the power of imagination in our hands where a lot of times like founders would have these big ideas and then the really successful ones would find a way to execute it with a lot of folks. And now I feel like with AI, we've got this opportunity and this window to really say, I want it to look this way. And then what are all the things that are possible? And I think that's also why we chose the tools today. So do you want to give a little preview of how we're going to weave tools into what we're going to showcase?
Yeah, sure. We are going to be looking at good old faithful ChatGPT to start, and that's where we built this digital focus group. And from there, we're going to take that and leverage, I think, Aaron's my favorite feature functionality right now, which is deep research. And then we're going to show you how you can create a templated designed battle card from that insight. So we're going to show you how to use 3 different tools in one workflow to help you achieve several different outcomes. And this was all based on some work we did about exploring the possible for how do you do competitive intelligence and get it out to your sellers and your marketing team in the right function and way. So I'm really excited to show you this. Do you mind if I dive in?
Yeah, let's do it.
Great. So for those of you watching, you're going to be able to see how I demo this, and I'll do my best to talk you all through what we're doing here. I'm going to show you first is this custom GPT. So this is something I made using just standard functionality within the ChatGPT feature set. And I built a buyers group for a test company that's in the recruiting software space. Those people who would buy that software would be like heads of recruiting, VPs of talent acquisitions, chief human resources officers. But then there's also probably buyers that are like CFO or COO, and in some cases, maybe a CEO. But I created this focus group. It was pretty easy from the back end to do. You put in your name, and then you can create a description for people to access it. Keep in mind, this is something that's shareable to your team. So after you build it, you can make it accessible for whoever you want by creating a custom link and make it just for your group. And then what I did was actually just gave it some pretty clear instructions. And we'll go into the instructions in a little bit, but it's very similar to a prompt, trying to set up what the output to look like, what you're expecting, and then some considerations. And then the other really cool thing is you can do these conversation starters. And what's cool about that is when you're sharing this with other users, maybe it's your product marketing team made this, but you shared it with your content marketing team, or you shared it with your sales team or your BDRs, they get some ideas of some questions they can go ahead and ask. Let's start with some of the pre-populated questions. This great one is, first one is, what's the latest trend impacting buyers of recruiting software this year compared to last year? Why someone would find value in that is could be some interesting topics for a BDR to use in part of their outreach sequence, or it could be some great content ideas for content marketing team. So you can see here the output based on this question will tell me like how it's been set up. So I have a panel audience, so it's my advisory board or my focus group, and then these different types of buyers, different sizes of organizations giving me feedback on what these tools are. And it produces it in a really well organized setup. So I might ask something though that's a little bit less canned. I might say, what is your impression of the main recruiting software tools? And I'll just list a few out that I know. Lever, iCIMS, and then I would say
Greenhouse.
Greenhouse. That's a great one. And I'll put in Workday because I think they have a recruiting tool too. And I'll say, let's focus on B2B SaaS as the industry. And I'm looking for executive level buyers.
So I like what you're doing here with giving it a lot more instruction. I think a lot of times when people get frustrated with ChatGPT or any of these other tools, it's this very broad, general prompt that they're putting in. And so then they get something that's like really general coming out and ultimately not satisfying the requirement of what they're looking for. And so I think this helps in that you're really narrowing down what the recruiting software tools are that you want it to evaluate.
Yeah, that's a really good point because, for example, if you were a marketing ops person or you in demand gen and you uploaded a list of contacts and you only had spotty data in it and you weren't confident in what you were putting in, what are you going to get? What's going to be the output of it? Something not quality. And so I think that's a good mindset to have, Aaron, of the effort and time you put into something is probably going to represent the quality you get out. The nice thing is we've created some templates that you guys can use so you don't have to go through the building process because we figured some of it out with you and we want to share it with you all. Going back to this question, you can see the industry focus that we mentioned, and then I got a new group of stakeholders to pull from. And I'm able to have a roundtable discussion, which is going to give me an idea of these trends. And you're hearing about what people's perspective are on these specific companies and what their strengths are. And what's interesting about this is you might know what your company's strengths are because you spend time doing your competitive differentiation. But I think what's particularly unique about these outputs is it might look at your competitor's webpage to see what they say their strengths are. It can look at Lever's website. It can look like at reviews of Lever. It can look at Reddit comments about Lever, which we'll see in the deep research. So you're getting an idea of what the market thinks of the company, not just what on their website, which is going to change how you think about doing competitive. So these are the pieces that can really help you with this next step. The last question I think that's really good to ask in something like this is why might you not purchase Lever? Because that's who we're focusing on. What would change your mind?
I think that's really key is the what would change your mind.
Yeah.
And I do think one thing we learned from Nicole Leffer last year is being able to give the GPT a little bit more of the frame of reference of, hey, pretend you're this, and in this instance, it's really giving that perspective of the buyer as opposed to just generally asking a window of ChatGPT of, hey, what do you think about Lever and would you change your mind? This is going to be a lot more specific to the panel that you set up, which is really cool.
Yeah. And I'll tell you, so this specific custom GPT format, we have run in, I think, 5 different industries that our span outside of tech, in tech, manufacturing was one of them, and gotten feedback from the users of those that this is pretty accurate. For example, a manufacturing advisory board that I built, someone who's a chief technology officer at a manufacturing company. I said, hey, this is the output of what we're getting. How accurate is it? This is to what you would think. And he goes, it's about 85% there. And I was like, that's pretty good, right? Because if you don't have that knowledge or your BDRs don't have that knowledge, 85% is a lot more than they could have maybe been able to uncover just on their own. So it's not going to get you to the perfect answer. And I think this concept of a no prize is what we'll call out. So I'm a big comic book nerd. And in Marvel Comics, if you find in a comic a contradiction to the story, you can write them a letter and they will mail you an empty envelope. And it's called a no prize because they're like, great, you found this flaw, but what are you going to get from it? And I think that goes along with a little bit of people who are like, ChatGPT can't do this or Claude can't do that. And I'm like, cool, but like it can do all these other things. So here's your no prize, but use what it can do.
Yeah, and I think it's also the speed. You
Yes.
think about a lot of teams now are worried about AI, one, taking their jobs, but two, that it's just like more is more. And it's taking away from some of the core things that they enjoy doing, or it's just like overwhelming. There's so much to do. And I guess my response a little bit with that is even in this instance, if it can get you 80% of the way there, and how long have we spent doing this? 5 minutes? That's a really great start as opposed to pre-Gen AI, where it was you were going through the G2 reviews or you were looking at all your competitor websites, and you should still do that just to keep yourself informed, but you can get a much deeper and faster level of analysis using these tools and then be able to leverage those for your other work, which I think is the really exciting part. So it's a lot of the legwork that we spent hours and hours chasing down. And if you're 80% there, not bad. You're still going to need humans to go in and see what's accurate and not. And certainly you can compare this to some of the interviews that you may do. And you should still do customer interviews and really get that human to human data point. But 80%, not bad.
Yeah. Okay. I could do this all day. Yeah. Okay. So now we've talked to our digital focus group. And now, Aaron, what are we going to do after this step?
Yeah, so this is also one of the things I find most fascinating and most exciting with Gen AI is we can take the work that Ken does and I can leverage it. And so I think that's what's really exciting, especially when we get going. It's like you have this idea and then you can build on it and pass it back and forth and make something even better. So I'm going to take the outputs from the GPT that we just showed you, and then we're going to go in and show one of our favorite tools within ChatGPT, which is deep research. And I have found it to be just such a time saver for research, and you'll see why in just a second. So I'm going to go ahead and share my screen. All right, so here we have Ken's research that he did with the GPT. And what I'm going to show you first is this is a super simple GPT that I found. This one is actually prompt like Ethan Mollick. So what's really cool here is those of you that follow Ethan Mollick, he is such a thought leader in the space and has really interesting ideas. One of the things that people really struggle with is prompting. And so this one is mirroring some of the guidance that he's given over the years and really being able to help you create a meaningful prompt. So we're going to start with this, and then we're going to get into the deep research. You ready, Ken?
Yeah, I'm so excited for this part.
Okay, so here we go. So I'm going to say, can you help me build a prompt for deep research? Now, you can skip this step if you want, and you can go right to deep research if you want. I like this because it just helps me frame the prompt a little bit better. And you can use this tool or this GPT for any prompt, just outside of deep research as well. And I'm going to include all this. So I can copy and paste it. I can also go in and add it from my Google Drive. And so there's a couple ways you can connect your Google Drive. That is often an easier route. You can upload it from your computer, or sometimes if you just want to paste, you can also just paste. And so I'm going to include all this information that Ken was able to glean from his GPT, and then really be able to then say, what else do I want here? I want to create in-depth battle cards based on this. And then what else do you think we were interested in, Ken?
I think one thing that we've learned is adding who maybe the consumer of those battle cards would be. So it would be maybe BDRs, account executives, and maybe marketers.
Yeah. And we're also talking about go-to-market motion. So I think we may also want to include some go-to-market strategy pieces. I'm gonna push the boundaries. Usually I say let's just stick to one thing, but deep research pretty neat. So let's push it a little bit. Should we include for a comprehensive? So this is just going to help me build the prompt to then take that, put it into the deep research. And so what's cool here is you're going to see it's asking me a few things. So it's wanting to know what my primary goals are because I was a little bit all over the place. And then it's going to just confirming like, what am I most interested in? So let's start and give it those answers. And then ultimately it'll give me a prompt that I'm going to use into deep research. So first off, the battle cards are going to be for, let's go all the above.
Yeah.
Why not?
That's how battle cards typically get used, right?
Yeah, for sure. And what do we care most about for the use cases? I'm thinking objection handling is always helpful, messaging and positioning.
I think maybe understand like the strengths of the current company compared to the competitors, right? Where we stand out so that the seller can have a quick hits on what to highlight when they're going against this competitor.
Great. And let's also just say this is from the perspective of lever, right? We want to tell it what company we're actually going to be building these for. And then let's go with a comprehensive, and let's say the tone, I don't know, you decide.
Yeah. Educational.
Okay. I was going to have the GPT decide.
Oh, okay. Yeah, do that instead.
All right, here we go. Okay. So we're going to get this prompt and then we're going to take it into deep research. And now one of the things that is a little bit interesting with deep research is it does take a few minutes. And so you'll see, we'll pause for a little bit to let it run the research, but then ultimately we'll have something pretty cool to show. And it's also giving me feedback on this prompt, which is pretty cool because it gives me a way to think about prompting for the future. So we're just going to go ahead and say, and it's also saying, okay, great, including the input variable. We are going to go ahead and copy this just to make it easy. Yeah. And then we're going to start a new chat. So what model, I guess this is another thing we should talk about. There's been a ton of new models that have come out since the last time we did this podcast. What are you thinking for your best practices? What models are you using?
So for this use case, I think maybe us going into 4.5 is the right choice, right? Because you're not going to be doing the pro model, which takes a lot of time to run through scenarios, but you're going to be able to get some of that comprehensive thinking.
I love it. And I do think I actually just did a training on all these different models and when to use them for different use cases. You should always experiment. If you're not getting what you want out of 4.5, try something else. So you're going to paste your prompt here, and then you're going to hit deep research. And this is really going to tell the GPT to, hey, I want something more. And what's really, I think, part of the magic here is that it really helps you to understand, well, are you confirming what competitor you like? So let's do all three. The other thing here that's pretty cool is you can actually tell it what a credible source is if you're finding that what you come up with is not what you were really looking for. So this is going to tell you what it's going to do, and it's going to start the research. As it starts to do the research, you can ultimately then see what it's researching.
Yeah. So I think one of the points that we've alluded to throughout this conversation today is using AI more as a thought partner, and rather than just, oh, I'm going to ask it this question so I can use whatever the output is, but having kind of an ongoing conversation and collaboration with the prompt. And I just want to share the Ethan Mollick, who you use that prompt inspiration from. He just did a study at Procter & Gamble where they looked at teams of professionals who were randomly assigned to use AI, as well as having a controlled group of two who didn't. And people actually were more productive because they used AI to expand their own knowledge. So the more R&D product centric groups were more likely to be more commercial thinking and think about the business, and vice versa. So think of this is a great example, Aaron, that you're showing of it being a true thought partner.
Yeah, I think that's really a good point. You can actually just click on where it's starting the research. Sometimes it'll automatically pop open for you, but it's going to show you how it's thinking through this problem that it's trying to solve for you. And I think the other really neat thing is you can see the activity and how it's thinking. You can also click to see where is it getting some of its sources from. And a lot of times you'll see 20, 30 sources or more, depending on the problem that you're trying to solve for. But I think this is also really good for content creators out there, or just when you're thinking through, how do I even get into some of these AI models? It's looking at things like you mentioned, Reddit, a lot of software reviews. It'll look at G2. It's going to look at, of course, the company websites. But as you think about your content strategy, these are areas that you might want to focus in if you want to be referenced in AI tools. I think the other thing that we're finding at my day job that's super interesting is that when we get traffic from these models, we actually see that those users are spending like 700% more time on our website. We're seeing them really engage with us because they are seeing that this is a credible source, and then the buyers are much more likely to consume more content, which is fascinating to me.
Wait, okay. I feel like that's really important. If I heard you right, you said that when someone using an LLM, so ChatGPT, Claude, and they're searching for information on a vendor and your vendor name pops up as a source, they click on your link, they come to your webpage, they're spending more time than those who just came to your site maybe through Google or maybe another advertisement or something.
Yeah, exactly. And I think it's not even just they're searching for a vendor when they're looking for thought leadership. Wow. I want to understand best practices about something. And then ultimately your company comes up, that it's much more reliable as a source. And so I think that is also then driving the buyers to get a better understanding of what your offering is. Just really incredible, the amount of time spent and the conversions that we're getting as well. And you're looking at, this is traffic that you're not having to do paid search for or paid social. This is all organic, but making sure that you're in the right places, that the AI is viewing what you're doing as being credible. And that's also a really interesting angle, because I think as B2B marketers, a lot of times we would think like Reddit, I don't know if that's super credible, but a lot of these AI models do look at Reddit. And so maybe it's worth looking at other channels to see what is the AI model that you're trying to get traffic from referencing. And so it's really interesting to see, here's G2 popping up as another example, because it also looks at that as being more credible.
Yeah, looks like 17 sources in just a few minutes.
Yeah.
How long would that have taken a person to do?
Oh, I think this could be a project onto itself, plus all this research. And I think the other thing that's really cool is it's ideas that maybe you wouldn't necessarily think of. SMBguide.com. I'm not sure that everybody would go to that to find information. Now, the other thing that's really cool with deep research is you can also guide it. If you think that, hey, you know what, I don't really think that G2 is super relevant for this exercise, or I don't think SMB Guide is going to be the one that I'm most interested in basing my research on. Tell it. When you're in the initial prompt, you can give it those instructions of really what do you view as being the most credible. You could tell it to look for analysts more specifically, or influencers, or different types of thought leaders, or hey, I want to mirror this thought leader and what they're saying, or find lookalike thought leaders, and then it will find those as being your research points. And so you can be very specific. Obviously, in this example, we're doing something a little broader just because we wanted to be able to illustrate how deep research works, but you can get really cool data and very targeted and very specific to what you're trying to solve for.
Yeah, Aaron, I just want to call out, like I'm seeing things like I'm pulling from Reddit snippets, tech blogs, G2 reviews, and then it's telling me that the G2 reviews might provide more insights than we would have had before. This is thinking, this is logical thinking and thinking about things that we didn't put into the prompt.
Yeah, I think the reasoning is what's really interesting in this. And again, this is coming back to that, what model should I use? And you could try this with different models. And that's also the cool thing too. So it's, do you want advanced reasoning? Do you want a surface scrape? And so now what it's also doing is it's giving me the next sort of steps it's thinking through, right? I'm crafting a markdown document to compare Lever, Greenhouse, iSense, and Workday. And that is pretty cool, right? Because it's, yes, I'm waiting. I could also be doing other work. I don't need to be in this window the whole time. I think some people get a little confused with that, and it'll alert me when it's done. But I really love seeing what is it that it's thinking through, and then how does it get the output that I'm actually looking for. So in this instance, it's weaknesses versus strengths, and really looking through creating meaningful battle cards that are going to help our sellers or our marketers or BDRs or our CSMs really understand where to punch and block. And even going through simplified jobs is interesting, because it's going to be like an ATS is going to be pulling in from that type of job board. And so you may not even think about that. What are the ratings and what are the other things that people are saying on these other types of job boards that might impact? Now, again, this is just an ATS example. You can use this for any industry. And I think that is what is like remarkable, right? So if you get a new employee and they're not familiar with your industry, it used to be, oh gosh, it's going to take 6 months or however long for somebody to really get up to speed and know the ins and outs of an industry. This can really help them to get up to speed faster. So if you think about onboarding, great tool here to be able to help them identify different sources that they should be considering, and then just generally learn about the market.
That's a really interesting point then, when you start thinking about hiring what talent you need. Maybe industry specificity isn't as critical as it has been in the past, especially as buyers have been expecting more subject matter expertise from vendors. Well, some of this gap can be closed through using deep research.
Yeah, totally. And coming back to the 80% thing, Ken, because I think that's also a meaningful metric to think about, is if you think about ChatGPT and sort of even some of the GPTs out there, it's like a high schooler who's very generalist and not necessarily versed in the ways of the world, if you will. What deep research is going to do is give you more of that PhD level. So almost like a UCAN, although obviously not as good, but it's going to give you a much greater level of sophistication than what you're seeing at just putting this prompt in a sort of regular window. Yeah. And I think there's also a little bit to be said, are there things that are going to be not relevant? Yeah. But I also think some of the research that we do as people, you're like, should I include this? Should I not? TBD. But there's certainly things where, you know, the different images that it's looking at, is that really going to be relevant to our battle card? It may or may not, probably not, but it's going to give us an output that's a little more summarized. We're going to continue to let this run. We're up to 40 sources now, and it's going to run for a few more minutes. So we're going to take a quick break and we'll come back with the results. And we're back and hydrated. So one of the things I think that is also so remarkable about these tools is you can walk away and come back and have something really meaningful and cool. In this example, we've got where the deep research looked at 42 sources. Pretty incredible for, I don't know, let's see, how many minutes? 11 minutes. Actually, we'll tell you how long and how many sources you have here. And this is actually what it came up with, which is pretty cool. It's going to give us an overview. It gives us value prop, key objections, which is something that we asked for. And I think the other thing that's really fun here is it's a little different than some of the other GPTs of earlier, where you don't really know where the source is. What's really cool with deep research is I can go right to the source, like, where did you find this? So it does seem to reduce some of the hallucinations that you might have seen in a year ago when we were experimenting. And so I think this is very cool in the sense of, hey, here are the traps, and it's going to give you those clear examples, and then it's going to give you the proof points and so on and so forth. But we have probably, I don't know, 25 pages of content here. How long do you think this would have taken you to write, Ken?
Oh man, back in my compete days, this would have taken me weeks to do. And really, honestly, during that time, probably frustrating and disappointing a lot of my stakeholders.
I hear that. All right, next, I think what we're going to do is go ahead and take this into Gamma and show you guys how to make something really, really consumable. Now, you can share this with your teams however you'd like. So you can create a Google Doc, you can put this in something else. But I think what we want to do is showcase how do you make it super consumable. A lot of the folks on the various teams, like, they don't want to read a 20-page document. Who does? So we're going to make it super, super simple, but as comprehensive as possible. So Ken, I'm going to go ahead and share this chat with you, which is another feature that's pretty cool. But what's pretty awesome is instead of having to just copy this whole thing, I can create a link and I can share this with Ken and he can go right to the conversation. And I'm going to go ahead and stop sharing and turn it over to you, Ken, and give you the link to continue the conversation.
Thanks, Erin. Okay, so as Erin said, I'm now able to actually access the link right where she left off. You can see here, this is exactly what she shared. And she did mention this is probably a couple 10, 12, 20 pages of information. So one of the things that I recommend doing is asking the prompt to shorten it down so that it is digestible, but you're not losing the information is gathered. I'm an optimistic person, so I'm a big believer on positive feedback. So I say, this is great. Thank you. And then I'll say, please condense to format for a format that is more digestible to a sales. I'm going to learn how to spell one day.
Yeah, with AI, you barely need to.
I know, right?
It'll still know what you're talking about.
And BDR audience. Rather than full paragraphs, please bullet the insights. Be sure to include the sources though, because I know that's really important for sellers. They want to know where the source came from. And then the other thing I think it's important to call it is don't remove any vital information that could be particularly, actually, I'm going to leave that misspelling in and see what happens. Helpful for a seller. So what you're seeing is it's thinking and creating a condensed version in what, 30 seconds?
And this is so much more consumable for 90% of the population. That being said, like you could also say, hey, I want to focus on just one of these competitors. In this case, we've got 3, but if you want to take like a deeper dive, you could do that. There's a lot of flexibility with what you can do beyond the deep research and then how to be able to use it. And so I think in this instance, we're just giving one example, but again, I really challenge our listeners and everyone out there to think about what's possible. What is the big, hairy problem that you're trying to solve? And then back into it with all of these different opportunities to create meaningful content.
Yeah, I agree. And so I want to call out something that you mentioned earlier, this 80% that we're really focusing in on. Now, I asked for it to condense things down, and it did. Maybe a little too much for my liking. But the nice thing is I can work with the GPT to have this improve. So I said, this is a little too tight. Please condense the analysis down to no more than 6 pages and include more depth around objection handling, because we know that's really important, and traps.
You're so nice to the GPT. I will actually typically tell it that I don't like it. So if it gives me an output that I'm not interested in, I'll say, this isn't really for me, or this isn't great. And then try to give them a more concrete example of what I'm really looking for. Just another little strategy. I think that Ken will probably survive when the AI overlords come, and they may not like the way that I'm responding to them, but that's just another strategy you can also use to get what you're looking for.
Yeah, very valid. And the call out is 2 things. One, uploading an example of what good looks like, or the style, the format, the tone, I think is really helpful in any scenario. Second, I will survive when the AI bots take over and you all we're mean to them. So I'm feeling good right now. Sometimes it'll try to put things in a Word doc, but this is good enough for the example we're trying to use. What I'm going to do here is I'm going to copy this input, and I'm going to do this the real way I would do it if none of you were here watching me right now do this. I'm literally just going to copy all of this information as it's producing it and Command C.
You're going old school.
I'm
Now,
not...
the other option you have here is also clicking on where it says right below, let me know if you want the iCIMS Workday version. You can also copy that. Now, The reason sometimes folks don't do it that way is if you take that copy and then copy that into, say, a Google Doc or a Word doc or something like that, it does tend to lose the formatting and look a little bit funky. And so when you do what Ken's doing, which is highlighting and copying, and then if you were to paste that into a doc, it would actually keep or maintain the formatting as you're seeing it on the screen. Depending on what your use case is, definitely the copy button can be faster and easier.
Yeah, very valid point. Okay, so now we have this content, right? But we want it in a more presentable way. I have heard sellers say, like, when I'm presenting competitive analysis, they're saying, like, in a Word doc, it doesn't present well. And a Word doc's fine, especially when it's internal tools. But when you're able to polish something and make it a little more finished, it does change the perception of the audience who's reviewing the content. And so I'm going to go back to, I'm going to call them our frenemy, potential long-term friend vendor, which is Gamma, because we did review them and give them a little bit of a critical review, but I am a convert because Gamma is my now go-to tool that I think I'm in every day.
Wow, every day.
know.
So you did also convert me, and I will say I did buy the paid version based on what you were able to do. I think we talked about Beautiful AI versus Gamma. Still love Beautiful. It's great. This is a really great tool for if you have specific content that you want it to preserve. And so I think one of the things that can be really helpful, and you're going to see Ken do it, is you've got multiple options about how to bring that content in, and you have the ability to decide how close you want it to match your original content. And that I actually do think is super helpful. And thank you, Gamma, for taking the feedback and also being able to upload custom templates. So if you need to preserve the brand of your company, you can actually do that now. Whereas when we gave it a fair review before, in my opinion, you couldn't do it before. So just shout out for the engineering work that was done to improve the tool.
Yeah, it is definitely a tool that I'm a fan of. Like I said, I'm just going to do a copy and paste. You could put this in a Google Doc. You could put this in a Word doc and upload it, but this is just the way that I'm looking at it. And you'll see here, there's a few different options. There's presentation, web page, document, and social. Now, presentation was what we reviewed before. I'd say it's pretty much the same, but what I have realized is I actually do use it to create some just quick hit PowerPoints where I just need things structured and laid out, and I don't want to spend that time doing it. But where I think Gamma is really standing out right now is documents, ebooks, white papers, internal training docs that you just want to look more polished. Gamma can do. So I just dropped in that content we created. And as Aaron mentioned, you can see up here, you can have the text content be generated based off what was said, condensed, or preserved. For this example, I'm going to say keep the text because we've already done this rich analysis and we vetted it to be quality. The other thing is I like to view card by card view, so it can help me create pages. And this is super easy. It's going to do its best go to have you split it up. And I like to have it try. And it usually does a pretty good job. So now I've got a battle card cover page and then the content broken down into specific portions. Again, this is our condensed battle card. Also, you can pull in from different places. So you can say, hey, do AI created images or use stock photos or use web images. And the format is what we're going to keep it on. So the other thing is it does give you little tips and tricks on how to use the solution while you're in it. As Aaron mentioned, you can do custom themes. I have a custom theme for us. So I'm going to go ahead and use that for this example.
Yeah, if you want to customize what your content is, you can give it additional instructions. So in this case, we are building it for sales, but if you want it to be more for marketers or more for SDRs or whatever it is, and then you want it to do the AI generation a bit more, it's going to do that for you right in the tool, which is pretty cool and definitely saves time without having to like create multiple versions or enlist your graphic designer and have to go back and change and all the things. So I think that's the other thing that I really appreciate about it is our graphic designer can focus on really more sophisticated projects versus just creating PowerPoints or ebooks or things like that can be done a little more simply through a tool like this.
Yeah, that's a great point. It's the time savings and efficiency that allows time for your designers to do other things while you're still able to get a quality output. So what, in 10 or 15 seconds, we were able to get this version and it looks pretty good, but I noticed when it was building, I really think this image is like a little lame. And this is a really long page just for this information. So I'm actually able to say, I'm going to take Aaron's advice. Don't like the design. Could you try a more standard view without an image? And it's going to take the feedback and work on it. I don't know about you, Aaron. Designers' queues are pretty long, and even an edit like this would have maybe taken a couple hours, if not a day plus. And I was able to just change the format of this in just a couple of seconds. It's not about replacing designers, right? It's about freeing them up to do more things that'll be more impactful, but you can still get the quality output you're looking for.
Yeah, 100%. And I think one of the things that I've found in my career is designers get really frustrated with the back and forth. And I think that the ability to cut that down can really enhance the experience for everybody, right? So it's your designers can focus on these like really cool projects and even create some of the templates that you can build these types of low-hanging fruit type of things off of, but then they can really focus on doing more video or animation or things that are going to add value to your brand. So the average person isn't going to be able to do just yet. And I think that they can really spread their creative wings, which is also something that I think is so powerful about being able to help have others self-serve on some of these types of assets.
Yeah, that's a really good point. So what, in less than 30-ish minutes, we were able to get a V1 of a completed competitive analysis battle card out to our sellers, and we were able to talk to our focus group. We were able to have a market analysis done, and then we were able to produce the content. Even if it's not perfect, you're still getting pretty good results for just a short amount of time.
Yeah, and I think the thing to add to that is you're getting to 80%. Your human oversight helps you get to that 100% or 95% or whatever your goal is. And so if you take the work that it's been done, like you can see from Ken's example, you can pretty easily edit it as well. So it's, hey, this isn't right, or I don't want to include this. Great, no problem. Easily edit it versus having to really do exhaustive research or take a ton of time or go back and forth with your designer or the whole piece that takes a lot of extra effort. And you can really streamline your workflows by being able to create something that's pretty good.
Yeah, I'm just laughing. Who hasn't in their career been working on something and been like, I think it's good enough. I don't need to go back to design. We don't have to do that now.
It's true, but I do think there is value to being able to work with your designers to do really meaty and meaningful strategic projects versus, again, I just feel like the designers, like how many designers have been like, I just can't wait to get into PowerPoint. I'm dying to make that next deck. Please let me do it. I think that that's another thing that AI really can help with is just how do we make things that we don't really want to do or more of the mundane, repetitive stuff, alleviate some of that pain for ourselves and up-level what we're doing. And I think that's the thing that I have found most enjoyable about AI and this journey that we're on.
I agree with you. It's exciting. So much has changed. Okay, so we just did 3 tools over kind of one outcome that we've really seen marketers struggle with no matter what size of company or industry. So today we actually solved one of the most common challenges and pains that a marketer has to do, which is to deliver the competitive analysis. And we did that with an output of a design battle card and started with that focus group that really helped us understand where a buyer's mindset is. So now that we've done that, where should we go next, Aaron?
Yeah, so there's so many different possibilities. And I think that's the thing that we're most excited about this season is that go to market and connecting people. You can take one tool and use the outputs in so many different ways. So it's not just this finite piece of research that you did or this user group and being able to ask it different questions and it just stays there. I think what's really compelling about these AI tools is you can connect them all. And I think at some point, Ken, we're probably going to want to talk about Make and Zapier and all the other tools out there that folks are using to create these automated workflows, which are super fun and interesting and really create a cohesive go-to-market engine that can support all the teams.
Yeah. So if you saw my face just now, I agree with everything Aaron said, but I am amazed by what Aaron's been able to do with Make because my head just spins. But it is possible to learn. It is doable, but it is really crazy how much progress has been made in the past couple months around integrating workflows that actually resemble a go-to-market process.
And I think the crazy thing is you and I, we're not engineers.
No.
And that would have taken a lot of engineering effort in the past to create the webhooks that all fit together. And it it just makes it a little bit easier. And I think it's one of those things that you can feel really dumb and really challenged sometimes when you're in some of these tools. I don't get it. I know with Make, I was really struggling last year and it was just, I could not figure it out. And finally, it just clicked. And once I got one working, it was a lot easier to create more. Same thing on the Zapier side and all the other tools out there. It's a little bit there's a pretty steep learning curve, but once it clicks, you can get a lot more out of these tools and have them automate a lot of the process that would have been a copy and paste, or there's a lot of human error that can go into transferring one from the other. And this creates just a lot more efficiency. So I'm excited to show some of that off this season. What else are you excited about this season, Ken? Because your research is super interesting.
Yeah. So I am thrilled that we are starting season 2 talking about go-to-market. We hit on it at the beginning of the episode, but go-to-market is now where we're seeing a lot of the energy around AI going into and people are investing in. And one of the reasons why we are talking about this shift is marketing is such an integral part to go to market that it's actually now being touched and leveraged by different groups, which it had before, but AI is really accelerating that and expanding it. So I think I'm most excited about going through this journey of what a go-to-market lifecycle looks like influenced by AI. So we're going to bring on some really cool guests. But what I'm most excited about is stuff related to my research, because I feel like our listeners, who are a lot of them are CMOs, CXOs, VPs, thinking about this leadership change and shift that needs to happen in order to get your teams onboarded is something we need to talk about. So we're going to kind of be talking about throughout the season, but I'm hoping to spend a little bit of time sharing some of my research, so geek out with you guys and make it applicable to you all.
And so one of the other things is the change management piece. I think a lot of folks are struggling with that. One of our favorite mentors out there, shout out to Cheryl Inoa, for bringing the whole Gretzky quote of skate to where the puck is going. The puck is like in the stratosphere. Last year, when we talked to some of our thought leaders, and it was like, oh, if I squint, I can see into the future. And now it's not so clear. So I think that the change management piece is something I'm super interested in, that you've been working a lot on, Ken. And what does that mean for leadership? And what does it mean for folks that are becoming managers? How to manage that change management through this time that is so uncertain?
Yeah, a lot of uncertainty. People are looking for clarity, and they're looking for their leaders to provide that clarity. No one else I'd rather be doing this podcast with. So I'm so excited to be starting in season 2. And everybody listening, if you've got ideas on topics you want covered, let us know, because we're building this together, right? It's still the same community that we had before, but it's just expanded a little bit. And we're excited to explore it with you all.
Yeah. And if you want to be a guest because you're doing something really innovative and you want people to know about it, our whole mission is to democratize AI for everybody. And so would love to hear from you, or if you have ideas, as Ken said, please reach out to us on LinkedIn or Twitter or all the different ways you can connect with us. We're all the things. We probably need a Discord. That's what the kids are using, but we're here to take your feedback and make this podcast the best it can be. That's a wrap on episode 1 of season 2. Thanks for being with us. Lots to look forward to this season and learn, especially as AI continues to transform the landscape for us. So be sure to smash that subscribe button, share it with your friends who may get some benefit, engage with us on LinkedIn or whatever your preferred platform is. We're here to listen.
And thank you for listening. Let's keep crafting the future of go-to-market together.